Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. What do we always talk about, folks, huh? Follow the money. And that is exactly what the Virgin Islands is doing as they subpoenaed multiple banks for Jeffrey Epstein's financial records. Now, we know that there was a significant amount of money laundering going on, and we know that they were washing money. Now, that hasn't been made public yet by the authorities, but it's quite obvious what was occurring here. And now, well, when there's smoke, there is usually fire. And we're seeing more and more talk about Jeffrey Epstein's finances, his financial records, and how it ties him to other people. And that is the biggest danger to the enablers. These people who were involved in facilitating Jeffrey Epstein's behavior, well, they probably won't face any charges when it comes to the actual sex trafficking ring, right? Unless, of course, they're one of the people that were involved in abusing the girls. But if you can tie these scumbag enablers to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell financially, well, now they might not get busted for being involved in the trafficking operation, but they sure as shit will have somebody talking to them about their financial ties to Epstein. Because remember, all of those ill-gotten gains that were spread around were all from this criminal enterprise. So that makes everybody who was receiving money from him and who was getting money from him part of the conspiracy. And if you want to learn a little bit more about RICO in a quick 3 hours, I highly suggest you check out the new limited series on Netflix called Fear City, New York versus the Mafia. They go into RICO, and you hear from these gangsters themselves just how crazy and how bad these RICO laws are if you're part of a criminal conspiracy. Before RICO, they had to go after the Mafia, going after each person, right? Once RICO came around, they were able to tie low-level soldiers all the way up to the boss due to the RICO statutes. And I truly believe that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing it play out before our eyes. Once they start digging into the financials, and once they start making the connections and the ties, it is going to be bad news for these people. And in that documentary, you hear from all kinds of different mafioso and lawyers, and they explain just how RICO was created. And the creator, the man who wrote the RICO laws, is actually in the documentary. So I highly suggest, if you're looking to get a better grip on RICO and how it's applied and how the government wields it as a huge hammer, definitely check out that limited series on Netflix, Fear City, New York versus the Mafia. Now today, our article is from ABC News. The headline, Virgin Islands government subpoenas multiple banks for Jeffrey Epstein's financial records. The author of this piece is James Hill. The government of the U.S. Virgin Islands is upping the ante in its quest to pierce the veil of secrecy that cloaked the life and wealth of pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, the deceased sex offender who accrued a fortune of more than $650 million under mysterious circumstances. And remember, that's just the fazools that are on the books, right? This guy had a lot more money, and like I was saying the other day, probably stashed under his bed, probably in a big hole out at Zorro Ranch. You know, this guy has money stashed. This guy also has money that is in the wind, right? Ghost money. Laundered money that was being parked somewhere offshore so that he could tap into it or access it if he ever went on the run. You know he has shit like that, right? And the only way to track that down is by a complete forensic investigation into the financials. At least 10 financial institutions. Now remember, the last time we were talking about Maxwell, it was only 6. Now it's 10. Including Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan Chase, and Citibank have been issued subpoenas in recent weeks from the Office of United States Virgin Islands Attorney General Denise George, according to court filings reviewed by ABC News. The subpoenas seek account records, transaction details, and communications concerning Epstein, his estate, and more than 30 corporations, trusts, and nonprofit entities connected to him. Now, that's a lot of legwork to do, right? You got 30 different corporations, you have banks, all kinds of things. So what'll happen is they will trace all of these back, every single one of these transactions from from where it originated and to where the destination was, who received it, who signed off on it, whose account did it go into, and they will track this money down and find it. There are so many different stories of forensic accountants digging into even personal cases where, people feel like their partners have stole money from them, stuff like that. And they come back and they find every single dime. So I have a sneaking suspicion that when these financials are finally collected and they're gone through, there are going to be some ties that bind. The move comes as lawyers for Epstein's estate are locked in an increasingly acrimonious duel with George, who filed a civil forfeiture against the estate in January, 5 months after Epstein died while in federal jail in New York. The complaint alleges that Epstein constructed a network of companies and individuals to enable and conceal his alleged sex trafficking of girls and young women to Little St. James, his luxurious private island resort off the east coast of St. Thomas. And that was the premise that Denise George has been working on in this civil case, right? She has been working on the premise that Epstein was abusing girls in the Virgin Islands all the way up until the time of his arrest. And she says she has proof of that. So this is just another level to this investigation. And these federal investigations, these kind of investigations, there are many levels to them. That is why they take so long. Because there are so many different threads that need to be pulled on, so many leads that need to be chased down, so many sources that need to be vetted. And we're seeing that now in the Virgin Islands and also with the other trial that's running concurrently in New York. You're seeing what's going on here. Epstein, through and in association with defendants, trafficked, raped, sexually assaulted, and held captive underage girls and young women at his properties in the Virgin Islands, the suit said. And we know that's the case. We've heard from the survivors. We know what occurred on that island. And we know that some of the girls were so desperate that they were thinking about swimming back to America. Think about how desperate you must have to be to think about jumping in that water and trying to swim home. These people that were involved with Jeffrey Epstein on the outer rungs, the people that facilitated his financials, the people that gave him cover, and the people that acted as conduits for him to be part of so-called polite society, this is going to be their downfall, folks. This is the way, the path to get the enablers. It is about the money. Follow the money. Earlier this month, the Attorney General revealed in court filings that her office is also scrutinizing the alleged role of Ghislaine Maxwell in Epstein's operation. And this is what we discussed a couple weeks ago, a week ago, I don't know at this point, but we discussed this recently, how the Virgin Islands was digging into Ghislaine Maxwell, and we talked about at the time how that it was obvious that they were doing the same with Jeffrey Epstein's financials. So now, with this new report, we have confirmation that Jeffrey Epstein's financials, at least by the team in the Virgin Islands, is being dug into and subpoenaed as we speak. Maxwell, 58, was arrested on July 2nd and charged in a federal indictment in New York. She is accused of grooming 3 minor girls and enabling their sexual abuse by Epstein between 1994 and 1997. In some cases, prosecutors allege Maxwell participated in the abuse. She has pleaded not guilty to all the charges, and the trial is scheduled for next year. Look, these are the initial charges, right? 94 through 97. And we know that there is so much more there. We know that Ghislaine Maxwell was an intricate part of Jeffrey Epstein's operation. And we know as the scope of this case grows and as things begin to bloom, that more is assuredly coming down the pipe for Ghislaine Maxwell. The government is and has been actively investigating Maxwell's participation in the criminal sex trafficking and sexual abuse conduct of the Epstein enterprise. Notice how she calls it an enterprise. She's Ariel Smith is the Deputy Attorney General of the United States Virgin Islands, and she is calling it a criminal enterprise as well. That's significant. wrote Ariel Smith, Deputy Attorney General of the USVI, in a court filing on July 11th. Lawyers for Epstein's estate are seeking to dismiss the government's lawsuit as an untimely action that is interfering with the estate's ability to preserve its assets and to pay claims to its creditors, including alleged survivors of Epstein's decades-long pattern of abuse. A voluntary claims restitution program established by the estate began accepting claims from survivors last month. Mr. Epstein is not continuing his alleged criminal enterprise as he is dead, wrote Christopher Croblin, an attorney for the estate, in a court filing in May. The government sat on its hands while Mr. Epstein was alive, notwithstanding that he registered as a sex offender with the government 10 years ago, and continued to do nothing even months after Mr. Epstein's death, Croblin wrote. So the estate is basically saying, oh, it's not our fault, Epstein's dead. This is all on the Attorney General of the Virgin Islands. How dare you not do anything while Jeffrey Epstein was alive? Well, that's true, I agree. The Virgin Islands should have done something while Jeffrey Epstein was alive. Somebody should have. But that doesn't mean that the estate and the remaining members of the criminal enterprise are going to get off scot-free, that they're going to get off without having to answer the hard questions. Because, my friends, those are coming, and there is no way for these scumbags to wiggle off of the hook this time. Epstein first acquired property in the U.S. Virgin Islands in 1998. Purchasing Little St. James, an island off the east coast of St. Thomas, for about $8 million. He then spent millions of dollars developing an elaborate compound with a main house, swimming pool, helipad, and guest villas overlooking the Caribbean Sea. Starting in 2010, Epstein made the island his permanent residence and established a host of vaguely named entities in the territory to run his business, charitable and personal affairs. And that's kind of what the estate was talking about. They were alluding to that without saying it, that the officials of the Virgin Islands basically enabled Jeffrey Epstein's abuse by giving him all of these sweetheart deals with the taxes, letting him set up shop, the shell companies, parking money, etc., etc. So that's what the estate was alluding to in their comments. He would later, through a series of separate transactions totaling more than $20 million, complete the purchase of a larger neighboring island called Great St. James. And remember, when he purchased that, it was with somebody else's name, right? I believe it was a Saudi billionaire or millionaire, something like that. Anyway, the fact of the matter is this. Jeffrey Epstein was at what he was at for a very long time. And people knew, okay? A lot of people knew. And a lot of these officials in the Virgin Islands most certainly knew. The source of his extravagant wealth has long defied logical explanation. No, it doesn't. All right, come on. We know he was set up. We know this was a blackmail operation. And we know that he had funds to draw from when it comes to his operation here. So, you know, it's a question where his money came from, no doubt. But all one has to do is take off the blinders and take a good, hard look at disgusting-ass, gross-ass Lex Wexner. Epstein grew up in a blue-collar neighborhood in Brooklyn's Coney Island, never finished college, and amassed his fortune while boasting of managing money only for billionaires. Though his only publicly known client was Leslie Wexner, the founder of The Limited. Wexner would later accuse Epstein of misappropriating millions of dollars from his family fortune. You know, it's funny, whenever these outlets talk about Les Wexner, they never go hard in the paint. They never talk about the fact that he was instrumental in this Jeffrey Epstein enterprise. They don't talk about the fact that he was the backbone of this enterprise. And they most certainly never mention the mega group. Because, folks, let's be real. We all know that this was a blackmail scheme being run by intelligence. And we all know what that means. Among the entities listed in the USVI government subpoenas to the banks are Plan D, which owned Epstein's Gulfstream jet, Nautilus Incorporated, which owned Little St. James, and Maple Incorporated, which owned his New York mansion. Several of the financial firms are also being asked for records concerning the Butterfly Trust, an Epstein-related entity that opened accounts at Deutsche Bank in 2014 and which listed several of Epstein's alleged co-conspirators among its beneficiaries, according to a report from New York State regulators released earlier this month. This is a RICO predicate, folks, all right? This is why we read between the lines. Deutsche Bank in 2014, and which listed several of Epstein's alleged co-conspirators among its beneficiaries. The ties that bind. Follow the money. That report found that Deutsche Bank maintained its relationship with Epstein until late 2018, despite multiple suspicious transactions and red flags that could have been related to his alleged sex trafficking operation. Epstein allegedly used the Butterfly Trust and various other accounts to send over 120 wires totaling $2.65 million to beneficiaries, including some transfers to alleged co-conspirators or women with Eastern European surnames, regulators noted, as well as to make lawsuit settlement payments to alleged survivors and rent, legal, and immigration expenses made to or on behalf of young, but adult women, according to the report. Folks, look, all of these financials, all that they're talking about right here is exactly what we've been gunning for from the beginning. This is RICO. This is a RICO case without it being named a RICO case. I'm convinced of that, because what's going to happen is the Virgin Islands and the prosecutors in New York are going to work together. They're going to get their ducks in a row, and it is going to be flames coming at Ghislaine Maxwell and the co-conspirators. Deutsche Bank agreed to pay penalties of $150 million for compliance failures in connection with the bank's dealing with Epstein, according to the New York State Department of Financial Services. We acknowledge our error of onboarding Epstein in 2013 and the weaknesses in our processes and have learnt from our mistakes and shortcomings, a bank spokesperson said of the report's findings. Immediately following Epstein's arrest, we contacted law enforcement and offered our full assistance with their investigation. So in banker speak, that means they were able to go through their protocols and find out how to steal better, in my opinion. Look, I told you all recently how I feel about the banksters and the financial sector. I believe that is the true evil in the world. Those are the people that truly are evil. A Deutsche Bank spokesperson declined to comment on the subpoenas from the United States Virgin Islands. Representatives from J.P. Morgan Chase and Citibank also declined comment. Other banks and brokerage firms that were issued subpoenas according to the court records include Fidelity Investments, Charles Schwab, Bank Leumi, Wells Fargo, Northern Trust, and Silicon Valley Bank. All of these places are engaged in money laundering and washing on a daily basis. 100% without a doubt, in my opinion. Silicon Bank declined to comment on pending litigation, but a spokesperson said that, to the best of our knowledge, Silicon Valley Bank has not had, and currently does not have, any business dealings with the individual or the entities named in the subpoena. Well, how about the people that are part of these entities? You see what they try and do with their stupid-ass, fork-tongued speech? They're always trying to dog walk you. They're always trying to tell you, hey, look at my left hand, but don't worry about what's in my right. A spokesperson for Northern Trust, Doug Holt, did not comment directly on the subpoenas, but said that, like other financial institutions, Northern Trust regularly cooperates with information requests from regulators or law enforcement officials. Yeah, I'm sure. I am sure that Jeffrey Epstein just chose your bank at random. There was no ties there. He didn't know anyone there that was going to facilitate this or anything, right? That's what they would have us all believe. But one thing that we have learned from the beginning of this case is that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were always thinking a couple of moves ahead. They wouldn't park their money in a bank that wasn't trustworthy or that they didn't have one of their henchmen at. That is not how they rolled. That was not their MO. All of these banks that were doing business with Jeffrey Epstein must be completely and utterly looked into. And a forensic accountant team needs to be dropped into each one of these places so that they can audit them as far as the Epstein stuff goes, and so that all of that information can be brought back to the prosecution so that they can use it to put Maxwell and the co-conspirators in prison for the rest of their disgusting natural lives. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, everybody, we'll be back later on. Do it again.